Hello, this is John from caveofprogramming.com. In this tutorial we're going to take a look at the enhanced for loop in C++11, and this is a real huge time saver. It's a wonderful feature which many programming languages like Perl or Java already have, and C++11 has introduced it to C++. Don't forget you may need to add flags to your compiler, as we saw in the first tutorial in this section, to enable this to work. And of course you need a compiler that is enabled, has C++11 capability. But if you've got that, you can go ahead and do what I'm about to do. So normally if we've got, let's say we've got an array, so let's have a char array, we'll call this texts. And I'm going to initialize this with some strings. So we'll put the brackets in there, and let's say 1, 2, and 3. Well, the first thing we could do here using C++11 is we don't need the type declaration anymore. So we don't need char, we don't even need these square brackets here. They're also part of the type declaration. Let's put auto in instead, which is going to save us some time, and we'll just build that to prove that it actually builds. And amazingly, it does, which is wonderful. So now we can iterate through text. So we would normally do it with a for loop, but C++11 introduces these enhanced for loops, and we can declare a variable here. Let's use auto again and call this just text without the S. And I'm going to put a colon here, and I'm going to type texts. So what this does is, as we've seen, auto is going to give us a variable of the right type, and this for loop is going to initialize this variable. It's going to set the value of it to each of the values in turn in this variable here, and this variable has to be an array or a vector, something that you can iterate through from the STL classes, standard template classes. It can even be a string if you want to iterate through the characters of a string. So let's output text here, and you can also enable this to work with your own classes, which we'll take a look at shortly. So if we run this now, let's build it, because we should get rid of that warning. We shouldn't have any warnings in there. And we can run this, and we actually output 1, 2, and 3. So this is clearly a lot simpler than what we'd have to type in C++98. So we can use this with vectors as well. So we can say vector, anything that you can basically iterate through with the index-based loop is probably going to work with the enhanced for loop. Let's say vector int, and I'll call that numbers. And let's add some numbers here, numbers.pushback. Let's add maybe 5, and I'll just copy that. And we'll have a few more, 5, 7, 9, and 11. So again, we can use a enhanced for loop. I better include that header there, though, include vector. We've got using namespace standard. Now we can type for auto number in numbers, then cout number, and that's also going to work, which is really a huge saver of time. So there we've got our numbers. If you want to use it with a string, you could also do that. Let's try maybe string, and we'll say hello equals hello. It's not really a good name for it, but anyway, and let's say auto C in hello, and then we can do cout C. That's also going to work. And previously we had to use either an index-based loop or an iterator to go through a vector. This is obviously a lot simpler. If you do for some reason need to use an iterator, often you'll recall the syntax of the type of that iterator was very complex. Like to iterate through this would have to do something like for vector int iterator equals, and so on. And in C++ 11, if for some reason you do need to do this kind of thing, then you can just use auto there for the type of the iterator, which if you've got a complicated data structure will save you quite a lot of time. But this enhanced for loop is obviously a much easier way to do it. So that's it for this tutorial. I won't give you any particularly creative exercise, except of course try this with a vector and try this with a primitive array. And it's a really simple syntax once you've typed it a couple of times. Very, very easy, very simple to use. And we have almost the same thing in many other languages as well. So it's just great that it's been added to C++. Okay, that's it for this tutorial. Until next time, happy coding.